Hey everyone, welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Tanya, and if you like to chat and talk about all things fantasy book related, then you are in the right place. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the books that I read in February. It will include the audiobooks, the physical books, the ebooks, because to me, they're all books, no matter what format you choose to consume them in. So we're going to chat about all of them, so let's get into February's books. So we're going to start with the audiobooks that I listened to in February. For this month, I only had one. It was The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, and I rated this book 4 stars. So here's what I'll say about this book. To me, this book was definitely better to do as an audiobook than to read. Now, that may not be what everyone's opinion was, but for me, I'm definitely glad that I did the audiobook. It took a little while, and this is not a long book. It took quite a while to get into the book. And if you're someone who is reading this book based off the marketing and, some of the taglines, that it's a romance or it's LGBTQ, it's a queer romance, any of those things, then you might not be getting initially what you expected in the book. Those things are all true. They are all components of this book, but it takes quite a long time before you get to that portion of the book. So the beginning of the book, we're following Linus Baker, and he is a 40-something government employee. He is a caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth. Basically, it's a government-run department. They oversee the care of magical youth. Those can be human magical youth. They can be, sprites, fairies, wyverns, any type of magical being. If they are a child, his department would be overseeing it. And some of the children don't have homes, so they're living in government-run orphanages. And he basically is a caseworker. He goes to those orphanages, makes sure the kids are being taken care of properly. There's definitely a lot of discrimination on magical beings in this group. People aren't very welcoming, they're afraid, they look down upon people who are different. The government has kind of a see it, report it kind of policy, which is also just kind of creating this negative atmosphere. To give you a little background on why there is a government agency needed to kind of look after the welfare of these children. So Linus basically gets summoned by his upper level management, and he gets sent on this highly classified mission to an orphanage to kind of look at the different children there, because they're extremely magical children, as well as look at their caretaker named Arthur. He doesn't get a lot of background on Arthur, but he's definitely given some folders, not very nice folders, but folders of information to look through on the children, and they have a wide different range of abilities. The biggest one being one of them is the supposed Antichrist. So as you can see, that promotes some concern, but Linus is charged with going out to this orphanage and just making sure everything's on the up and up, and he's supposed to send back very detailed reports to upper management. You see a lot of growth for Linus throughout this book. He's always been, kind of a standard rule follower, doesn't break out of the norm, does exactly what he's told, he lives by the rules and regulations. But when he gets to this island, he gets to know the children living there as well as Arthur, and his respect and love for them kind of blossoms from there. I don't want to give too much away, but definitely if you like a book where this is more of a, I would say, a cozy fantasy, there's a lot of real world problems in it, but with a little bit of a magical twist. And it's a very heartwarming story. It's very much accept people for who they are and about personal growth. So if you do like that sort of story, you're gonna like this book. But like I said, it takes a minute to get into it, and I don't know if I hadn't been listening to it and had the narrator of this book did a great job and had them there telling the story to me, if I would have finished the book or not. Because I was probably 25 to even maybe 50% of the way through the book before I was fully invested in it. It's a very slow start. I mean, you need kind of that background, but I will say, just based on, the kind of media blurbs, it's not the start of the story that you may be expecting. To get to that kind of heartwarming growth romance portion, it takes a long time. So definitely, I would suggest giving this book a listen, but I would personally suggest that you do the audiobook and maybe not the physical book. So the second book I read this month was Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. It is the first book in the Crimson Moth series. The second book, Rebel Witch, came out this month. That's on my to be read for March, but for February we're going to be talking about Heartless Hunter. This is a young adult fantasy, and this was a great read. It was super easy, it flowed really well. It was kind of a unique twist on, a standard witches being persecuted kind of trope, but this one definitely had a twist to it, in the fact that witches had been in power. They were the ruling monarchy in this kingdom, but there was a rebellion because there was 3 sister witches who, let's just say, they weren't very nice people. So there was a rebellion, they were overthrown, it was looked at that all witches must be bad, and basically from that point forward, witches were being hunted down and killed. So just a lot of persecution of anyone who is a witch or anyone who was suspected of being a witch. This book also has a great enemies to lovers kind of storyline. Rune, who is our main character, she has been going out and saving witches from the Blood Guard. Gideon, he's the captain of the Blood Guard. I can bet you can kind of see where things will go there, but this book kind of had it all. It had love, it had friendship, it had evil, it had backstabbing, it had intrigue, it just had all the things. And the author did such a great job on keeping the story unique and intriguing. There was a great world building, so would highly recommend. Not sure if I said this already yet, but I gave this book 4.5 stars, and I'm really looking forward to reading the second installment, which is Rebel Witch, this month. And the next book I read this month was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This was a great little cozy fantasy read. It's a pretty short book, as you can see. It is, let me tell you, it is 317 pages long, so a nice, short, little, easy read. It is a cozy fantasy book. It is set in our world, but in this world, fairies, sprites, the fae, they all exist. So that's kind of the fantasy element in there. And Emily Wilde is a scholar, and she's been working on an encyclopedia about all the various fairies, fae, magical creatures in the realm. And in doing so, she needs to go out and do some field work, some research, and that's kind of where this story takes place. So my initial thoughts on this book was that it would make an excellent TV series. I just think, following Emily along on her scholarly pursuits as she's doing her field studies of the different fairies and gathering the different lore for her encyclopedia, I just think that would be a super cute TV show. That being said, the book was great too. There was good storytelling, there was dynamic characters, some of those, kind of with questionable morality, which I always find kind of refreshing in a book. You can't have people who are just, one-dimensional and always doing the right thing and following the right path, or, the opposite of doing things completely, wrong and backhanded. So I like those kind of gray characters where sometimes you go, I may have questioned that choice. Was that really the most moral or ethical thing to do? Or what I would have done? Those, I think, make the most interesting characters, and you get a lot of that through the books. Like I said, it was just really excellent character building. There is a cute love story that kind of starts to give, you get a hint of it, and it starts to blossom as you go throughout the book. It's not a standard love story by any means, but it definitely fits the Emily Wilde character perfectly, so the author also did a great job there. I gave this book 4.25 stars, and I think kind of the message of this book is, you know, it shows you are not alone, even when you feel like you're alone. You're used to being on your own, but there, you know, you find that along the way there really are a lot of people out there who care for you, and I thought that was a great message as well. I'll be reading the second book in the series in March. There is also a third book that is already out, so looking forward to that one as well. But if you're into cozy fantasy, highly recommend. Definitely put this on your list to read if you haven't already. Then the next 3 books that I read were all in the Echo Saga series by Philip Quintrell. I read the first book in the series, Rise of the Ranger, which I basically read that one in January, but I didn't technically finish it till February 1st, so I'm including it in my February wrap-up. I also read Empire of Dirt, which is the second book in the series, along with the third book in this series, which was called Relic of the Gods. Now these are not small books, I mean they're not huge, but each of these books was around 550 to 600 pages. If you're looking for a new epic fantasy series, then I would highly recommend giving this one a try if you haven't read it yet. Now I will say the first book, because of the depth of the world building and the number of characters in the books, it does take a little time to get into that first book. There's definitely a very large character base, a very in-depth world, and you know, it just takes a little time to get to know all those characters and to build that kind of relationship with them. Now I will say right out of the gate that one of the main characters, Asher, who is a ranger, I loved him from the start. Some of the other characters, it took a little time to get to know them. Gideon being one of those. At first I was like, he's a mage in mage school, you know, not that interesting of a character, but his character grows a whole lot throughout the 3 books, and, you know, has such a great journey that by the end he was one of my favorite characters. Now, there are 9 books in the Echo Saga, but these 3 kind of acted like a trilogy, so you do follow the same characters throughout the 3 books. I mean, you get new characters every book, but you know, it's a growing party of characters. It's during the same time frame, you know, kind of a common goal throughout the 3 books. And then from what I've seen for the 4th book, then you pick up like so many years, same world, but so many years in the future. But the first 3, definitely you're going to want to read those pretty close together just so you can keep all the characters straight, and it's a pretty compelling story. You're going to want to continue it, but I think, you know, sometimes with these big epic fantasies, it's nice when you can read them back to back to back. The author does do a great job with, you know, there is a list you can look at for all the characters, so if you need to kind of review, if you do have some time in between reads and can't quite remember who exactly, you know, everyone is, and there's maps and, you know, just different information at the start of each of the books, so that's really helpful when you have such a detailed epic fantasy like that, so definitely appreciated that. Overall, I would say I gave these, the first book I was probably at like a 4-star. Like I said, just because of the development that was needed, it took some time to get into it. But the second and the third book, I was at 4.5, 4.75 stars. Now, I will say, I'm not going to talk about what happened, but the third book, the ending broke my heart a little bit, but that's okay. Parts of it were very happy, parts of it were not so happy, but you know, I think authors just kind of have to do that sometimes to have the story go in the way they want it to go, but I was invested enough where I was a little heartbroken at the end of the third book, so just be forewarned if you make it to the third book, you know, the outcome may not be what you expected, but definitely a great story. So looking forward to picking up the 4th installment of the series in March. And that is everything that I read in February. If you read any of these books, let me know your thoughts down below on how you like them. And if there is anything that you read this month that you think I would enjoy. I always love hearing what other people are reading and getting ideas of what I can pick up for myself. So take care, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.